So I made a little accuracy game. So hey, I did the refactor, I'm happy, but then I see a little red squiggly down. So that is Meadow. That was web development. Overall, there's just like tons and tons of density, tons of variety, millions of trees, and spanning across 50 kilometers squared. We actually did the development of that game from inception to release in 8 months. So it was a very high intensity environment. Yeah, it's always good to contribute a bit to the design and make sure that it makes sense in the context of the technology that you're working with. We promised a whole bunch for the Indiegogo. Didn't go as planned, and basically the design we promised had to be scrapped because it just didn't work. A double-headed chainsaw. So one of my first projects with Code Hatch was to do like procedural weapon generation. We thought that'd be a really cool. C++ is great for generating really fast assembly. That's just a VS Code extension that you can install right now in VS Code. Word generator. Video timer allows me to edit my videos a little bit better. I was also doing some think pieces way back in 2011. This was like my C++ project, doing forest rendering. Here's a little physics puppet guy. You can kind of see, there's a passion for graphics. There's a passion for game design, game development. That's kind of what I enjoy thinking about in my spare time. So there you have it. Hello, this is Nathan Franck. I'm a software developer, have been developing software for around 9 years professionally. Before that was doing Bachelor of Computing Science for 5 years, and have always had an interest in game development, programming, for quite a while. So today I wanted to show just some more visual means, to show off my experience, show what I've been doing more recently, and then we're going to kind of dig back further in time, show you all the things that I've been doing for web development more recently, and then less recently has been game development. So yeah, we'll do that today. So the first thing, the most recent thing, has been working with Meadow AI. Meadow AI is a neural net company, AI company, and a lot of that work has been done by like AI scientists. And from my end, I was doing HTML UI programming. So a lot of their solutions have a website associated with them that you can either access publicly or you can access within a hospital, and by using HTML and JavaScript, it's possibly a little more portable than other forms of code, UI code specifically. So yeah, I've spent the last 2 years doing a lot of TypeScript programming. This little database kind of preceded me, and I was able to help refactor that and add some more features to that little guy, adjust the workflow. And yeah, a lot of their solutions are proprietary. Last thing I was working on was proprietary and used internally to help get data from humans to AI. It was this annotation software where you could move around polygons to create shapes that fit onto the ultrasound, so that the AI has an idea of like, oh, I have an image, and now I have this annotated polygon, and using that as input for training means that once the AI is trained, then that will be the output. So it was a success, but it's something that I can't really show to you guys. That was what I was doing most recently. So yeah, lots of HTML in there. We recently moved to React for everything, so I was doing a lot of React, which works fine with TypeScript, as well as using like state managers like Redux, whatnot. But yeah, my first love, especially, and it came out in this web development as well, is graphics. So during this, I ended up doing some WebGL work and making some shaders. Something that I can kind of try and help prove that I was doing work was, like, I was also working on TypeScript at home, and this is the kind of graphics end of things. I've been enjoying making libraries in TypeScript. So one of those libraries that I was working on is called Shader Builder, and using the powers of TypeScript, you can do some really neat tooling for generating shaders. So the idea I had with Shader Builder was that you could provide this like single location to build a whole shader, and you can input some parameters that you specify. So I'm like, for the domain of making this tail material, and just to rewind, basically what this tail material is for this little demo here. So I like clicking things accurately. It's good for UI. It's good for games in my spare time. So I made a little accuracy game. And the tail shader is this kind of trailing tail behind me. This is its own shader that's rendered onto the screen. So the shader, the whole thing is right here, and you'll notice that only some of this is GLSL, the OpenGL shader language, right here and right here. But then when these canvas dimensions is mentioned, this is specified up here in the globals. And so the fun thing is if I went ahead and did a refactor, like a lot of making large code bases is doing refactors. So if I were to say like, it's not really canvas dimensions, what I really mean is something else. Screen dimensions, like maybe that's what I meant. So hey, I did the refactor, I'm happy, but then I see a little red squiggly down here. Something's wrong. So when I actually go to use the shader, I'm not specifying the right input parameters, and so it's going to give me a problem. It's going to say screen dimensions isn't here. Like, where did it go? So, oh wait, I didn't put in screen dimensions. So I'm using this ES6 spread syntax to add some extra bindings from tail binds, which is up here. And this is still called canvas dimensions. Well, if I go ahead and change it to screen dimensions now, refactor complete, I no longer have any red squigglies anywhere. So there you go. Little bit of fun TypeScript. The actual code to do that is all in here and involves a lot of this typing. So I've been having fun with TypeScript typing. It's a bit of its own language, and maybe good to read, maybe not. I'm also a total fan of object-oriented programming or functional programming or procedural programming, that kind of thing. I'd like to imagine that you should use the paradigms, you should use all paradigms where they're appropriate, kind of thing. So I thought this was a pretty neat way to build out these libraries. So maybe you can make your shader libraries more reasonable. Well, that's kind of cool. So that's the sort of stuff that I was doing at Meadow. Of course, I wasn't doing exactly that because, the stuff that was happening at Meadow was proprietary. So, yeah, and imagine, I am doing React as well. That's kind of standard. So that is Meadow. That was web development. And back in 2019 was when I was working at CodeHatch, and all the way back to 2012. I was doing that for 7 years. CodeHatch is a little game development company out of Edmonton, and they put out their most famous initial thing was Starforge, and then there was Reign of Kings, which I don't have it here. Reign of Kings on YouTube. We actually got a lot of videos for Reign of Kings, and which is awesome. It's fun to see. And then more recently was Heat. Heat was developed for like 3 years and released in 2019, or sorry, 2018, was it? Yeah, 2018. And yeah, so I guess I'll go chronologically from the most recent to the less recent. So Heat, Reign of Kings, and Starforge are all these multiplayer survival games. They're in 3D, they're in Unity. and we're just shipping for Steam and Windows. So the target audience specifically for Heat was these players. They want this realistic survival game. They want good graphics. We're assuming they have pretty decent PCs with Windows, and they have Steam. So we wanted to make like the best survival multiplayer game we could imagine for ourselves. So what did I work on this? Well, you can see the lovely grass. I was I was basically the main force behind all of the natural rendering in this game. Was a big part, and the gun mechanics as well. I was working on. So, gun mechanics being the animations of the guns, both like hand motions, how it lines up with the camera, and also like when these animations play out, how does that affect the state of the gun? Like when you chamber a bolt on that, the moment it hits the back, that's when you have a new round chambered. So if you were to interrupt that animation and switch to another weapon, you'd still have that gun chambered, and you could go back to it, and you wouldn't have to rechamber, kind of thing. So the animations were made by an animator, but then I went ahead and kind of like fit them into the first person space. Ammo management also, so that kind of worked into the inventory system, which I wasn't the main person behind. And as well, the system of like managing all the bullets. So bullets actually had like travel time through the air. You had to lead your targets if you were shooting from very far away. Different damage based off of what hitbox you hit, and all of the bullets were handled under a single bullet system, which ran really fast. It batched as many processes as possible, so all the ray tracing was done in a single step. All the like incrementing all positions and modifying all velocities due to gravity was done all in one step. So that sort of data oriented, like we're gonna group all the bullets in a single data space, and we're gonna operate on them all together. And so that ran really fast. Yeah, and the data-oriented stuff goes a lot into the forest rendering. So the end of the trailer is just like a whole bunch of natural rendering, which is all the stuff that I've done. So there's like ants moving along the ground. All these sticks were individually spawned and managed. These forests that are supposed to be kind of like dense to the level of normal real-life realism. It was a big challenge to manage, like, how am I going to deal with fill rate for all these? So, like, just trying to tweak things so that, models render first, sprites render next, sprites being placeholders for the actual real tree models. Sprites were just like these flat billboards with normal data, and they were cut out in the shape of a tree and had the colors of a tree. Even the light shafts through the forest, I was kind of helping with the composition of all of that to try and make it look good. You'll see that there's sticks that have spawned on a trunk. This is kind of part of this like data-oriented spawning system. So all trees, bushes, ground clutter, grass is all managed under the same spawning system, where grass is high density and trees are low density, and there's rocks that are even lower density than that. So for low density objects, they can actually influence which height the higher density objects can land on. So these sticks are very high density, and since the low density objects have already spawned, you can use that as like an additional height map to like find where the sticks can fall, so that they're like kind of landing on the stump and easing down onto the ground. And that helped a lot with just getting this ground clutter. Another thing too is that this dead tree is influencing the amount of sticks that spawn. So around the dead tree, more sticks spawn, and normally in the forest, there's not as many dead sticks that spawn. So you can have these like areas of clutter around these lower density objects, and all this needs to run really fast because I want to show you. Let's see. Ta-da! It's a big world, so the design, the scope of this game was too big. I don't want to say that we didn't bite off more than we could chew, but I tried to make it look as good as possible, at least, even though, there was just too much in this game. So, yeah, this is a big world. There's like a mountain in the distance, and lots of different biomes. This stuff I didn't work on. This is a set piece. There's more forest. So, yeah, overall, there's just like tons and tons of density, tons of variety, millions of trees, and spanning across, 50 kilometers squared. So it was a big undertaking. I would say, like, from the natural rendering side, this game was a success, and there's lots of unsuccessful things about this game. But I'd say for the things that I was definitely part of, that that was a success. So yeah. The game before that was Reign of Kings, and yeah, there's lots of content on Reign of Kings. Reign of Kings was a decent success. We actually did the development of that game from inception to release in 8 months. So it was a very high intensity environment as we were dealing with trying to get enough money in the coffers to survive, and it turned out very well for Let's Players. So yeah, again, a survival game. You're running around collecting resources, you're finding other people, you're talking to them. And the good thing about the design of Reign of Kings was that since everyone was doing melee combat, there was less of this, you see someone and then you just murder them immediately by shooting them with a gun, and they die. Like, you have to run up to them and start meleeing them, and by that point maybe you're talking. So it created a more novel community within the survival space for a while there, back in 2015. Yeah, and the graphics look pretty decent. So for me, on this one, what have I worked on? So again, mostly the natural rendering end of things. This game is set on an island, and so the forest I was working on for that as well. It still looks good. The density isn't quite as dense as Heat, and I was using more object-oriented style to do the forest rendering back here, which worked. It was just slower, and you couldn't do as much. As well, like the costume system. So this guy's like wearing this armor. I had to make sure the armor was sized to his body. Just a lot of like here and there things, and just like polishing the final graphical output was a lot of what I was doing. So the lighting, the scene composition, you can see like indoor and outdoor lighting. The ambient occlusion someone else worked on, that I just kind of tweaked and optimized. A lot of optimization in this game. Like Heat, it needed lots of optimization, so there was a lot of work to do in that regard. Yeah, even like contributing a bit to the design. The fact that there's only a single point of interest, this King's Throne Head, where you can become king. I helped kind of steer that direction, and yeah, it's always good to contribute a bit to the design and make sure that it makes sense in the context of the technology that you're working with. And in this case, it worked relatively decently. So yeah, lots of graphics, lots of optimization, and yeah, the armor system, a bit of melee, that sort of thing. Yeah, so that was Reign of Kings. Before that, Starforge. So back in 2012, we did the Starforge Indiegogo. I was brought on around a little bit before that point, so I could help work on some of the video and features. You'll notice the screenshot displays a double-headed chainsaw. So one of my first projects with code hatch was to do like procedural weapon generation. We thought that'd be a really cool thing. Didn't end up being in the final game, but it was novel at the time. And yeah, so for Starforge, we promised a whole bunch for the Indiegogo. Didn't go as planned, and basically the design we promised had to be scrapped because it just didn't work for performance, and had to just be like done from the ground up. So I was there for the redoing it from the ground up. Started my work with Forest, started my work with graphics, did some inventory code, did some terrain code, and yeah, that project was very scrappy, very controversial. Not our finest moment, but yeah, we went on to create Reign of Kings. So yeah, three different projects. These all shipped. They all were available on Steam, and yeah, that kind of spans the course of my game development career. So that was my professional kind of existence for a while, and then in terms of hobbies, I keep doing them. So over on GitHub, shows off some repositories that I've been working on. The most recent being I've been just brushing up on my C++. I figured that is a good thing to do. C++ is great for generating really fast assembly. So I've been posting a couple milestones, getting a little octopus guy to walk in this Wicked engine, which is a C++ based framework for making games. So that's been going well, and previous to that, I was working on some TypeScript, which I was showing off previously, doing little rendering demos, the mouse accuracy trainer. This VS Code extension I built can make different random words from this kind of safe word library that I found. Allows you to create different error codes that you want to. Like, say your users want to remember an error code that occurred. Like, if you give it a random noun, then they will more easily remember it and be like, hey, I had this error a while back. It was called, like, Slimy Cove? Oh, Slimy Cove. Let me look it up in the code base. And so then Slimy Cove is in the code base where you catch an error, catch an exception. So there's a thing that's just a VS Code extension that you can install right now in VS Code, word generator. Video timer allows me to edit my videos a little bit better. So the video you're currently seeing right now, I'm editing by annotating the video up using video timer, and then so I have these timestamps of when things happen, and I can cut out the bad stuff and keep the good stuff. This was made in JavaScript and HTML. So that's kind of the more recent stuff. I was also doing some think pieces about game design and about TypeScript, showing all the cool things you can do with TypeScript. I think it's really neat. And going back in time, I've been putting out videos on YouTube for different projects that I'm working on. So, like, way back in 2011, this was like my C++ project doing forest rendering, and that kind of went on to become what I was doing with CodeHatch for a bit. So that worked out very well. Different things. So hey, I was learning Unity for CodeHatch, and here's a little physics puppet guy. Ta-da! All sorts of things. I made a mod for Unreal that shoots paintballs out of guns. And a VR paintball game. Never finished, but the concept is there. So all sorts of little designs. A lot of these projects I haven't finished because, of course, I've been having a professional life around them. But, you can kind of see, there's a passion for graphics. There's a passion for game design, game development. That's kind of what I enjoy thinking about in my spare time. So there you have it. So yeah, that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching, and I hope something caught your interest. Thanks, and bye-bye.